Couple idiots try to do a podcast. I know what you're thinking. Sounds kind of like something to do with John Cougar Mellencamp. Well, I just happened to drive past Seymour, Indiana last night, and that's where he's from. I, too, am a Hoosier. I love that, and thought I'd just do a little tribute to the old Mellencampery. You see, this is a very, very special Monday night. Why is it special? Is it special because somehow I found out the way to fix the world? No. Is it I found out a way to keep the Republicans and the Democrats from being so fully corrupt that they should be despised for the rest of eternity? No. They're just going to have to be despised. Have I figured out a way to create a way that we as Americans can fully, full confident that we are in fact the government? Not at all. What I have figured out is this. Every Monday night, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, I'm going to do my best to bring you a few laughs, bring you a few insights, maybe get you closer to God, maybe have a little repartee with my son. But most importantly, I'll let you know you're not alone. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me. This is God's Comic, Brad Stine, and this, well, if you're not familiar, you will be. Brad Stine has issues. That's my theme song. This is my theme. This is God's Comic, Brad Stine. Brad Stine Has Issues, the podcast where comedy, conservatism, Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. This is your favorite comic who speaks on things and issues and ideas that usually gets people canceled or fired or ending up somewhere sleeping with the fishes. So far, they haven't captured me yet. They might be going after my son. I don't know if he made it. Wyatt, are you here?
Loud and clear.
Well, there he is, my friends. You know, you gotta admit, folks, when it comes to Brad Stine Has Issues, why, we can always count on a whole batch of people showing up, people from all over the world. You know, we just had St. Patrick's Day, and son, we had Get Irish that show up and watch this show. Is there a reason why Irish people would watch this show? Is it for you or is it for me?
Okay, starting off with this, okay? Well, where do I begin? I like that you're wearing green. I like how you're trying to, you know, what's the term? You're trying to entice them to vote for you, but we all know nobody is here for you or for me.
Maybe
they're here for when this inevitably crashes and burns.
Well, and it will. But I want them to show the shirt.
You mean my shirt? The my shirt that you keep taking?
Zelda!
The shirt that is mine and I own, and you gave to me and then took back because of this?
Listen, you got to understand something. I wear shirts that I feel like will
all mine.
They bring an impact. They let people excited. They want to see.
That impact being, it is mine.
Listen, son, I probably bought this shirt for you, if I'm not mistaken.
You did, and then you took it back, apparently, because... Yeah.
Because it's a cool shirt, and I thought of it.
I know. You know how I know that? Because I used to wear that shirt. Then you took it.
Well, listen, I'll tell you one thing I didn't take. I'll tell you somebody I didn't take a shirt from. You want to know who they are? You want to know whose shirt is still being worn as we speak? Why, the first person that showed up, and as you know, it's...
Nick Kress. He's back.
Okay, I'm going to show you guys.
I'll get the GoPro out. Let's see what happens.
See if it shows up.
Turn it on? Yep, there it is.
Okay, there it is. Now, watch this. I bring it over here, and I spin it this way so you guys can see I don't make stuff up. And look what it says.
Hold on. Here it is. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, look what it says. Right here, top. Carrie Tudor. Hey, Brad White and all here.
Can you zoom it in a bit? They can't really see it that well.
Okay. Carrie Tudor. That's what I see.
Well, congratulations, you're wrong.
It's number 1, Kerry Tudor. Guess who's number 2? Clara Beatty. Hey, Brad and Wyatt. Guess who's number 3? Tim Myers. Hi, Brad. James Voigt. Monday with Brad. Hello, Brad and Wyatt. The Force is with you. That's Force Bainey. Wyatt, who's got the coolest name in the world?
Force.
Yeah. Jim Brona. Hey, Brad and Wyatt. Good to be with you all tonight. Good to be beaming with. Good to be being with. What did that mean? Bevan McMenaman. Hello, Brad and White. Karen Boyd finally showed up. She shoved her little hand in right in line and said, welcome back, Nick. Hey, Brad, Wyatt and all. She gave me 4 severed hands and a heart. Wyatt, why the severed hand? Is she trying to say that she's a serial killer?
I don't know about that. What I want to know is why an abnormal number of hands, but a normal number of hearts?
Right.
Or maybe it's a normal number of hands and a non-normal amount of hearts, but it's an alien or something. Like a 4-armed, 2-heart alien, and we only got one of them. Where's the other heart? Huh? Where is it?
Wow, he's getting to the chase. David Martin's here. Shout out from Dave from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Wyatt, should we say a prayer for Dave? Father, please help poor Dave. He lives in Canada, and he's doing everything he can to escape. But Trudeau is on his tail. Please help him survive. And if he does, be thankful that I prayed for him and have him send me gallons of maple syrup. Why, you love maple syrup.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. Kerry Tudor sent us what I can only describe as a nightmare.
What?
Do you not see it in your comments?
Let me look here.
Kerry Tudor, I don't like that.
Carrie Hathaway, happy money, happy spring, praying for peace on earth or aliens. Brendan Murphy, Irish are here because of the honesty and genuine crake. Huh? Edwina Ziegler, hello from West Virginia. Karen Boyd, 8 people above that, Brad, sorry. I don't see, Carrie Tudor, no, she's waving at you. Karen Boyd, 2 hands each heart like normal. I don't see what you're talking about.
You don't see the image? Okay, hold on. I'm going back to the GoPro. Show me exactly what you see for that comment. Come on.
Which comment?
Kerry Tudor. The one that's right above, no, she's waving at you.
Well, hello, welcome back, Nick, Brad Wyatt, Karen Boyd, Brett Loomis.
Don't you ignore this. No.
Karen Boyd's got some,
Kerry Tudor sent us 2 comments in a row.
What?
The first one was the creepy image. The other one is...
No, mine says, hey, Brad Wyatt and all here, Kinsman, Ohio, back in town. That's all I have. That's all
Show me on the GoPro, now.
Oh, for Lord.
Show me on the GoPro.
Look.
Oh, my goodness. What? Where is it?
I'm sure.
Kaylee, what did you do? Where's the...
What kind of a Twilight Zone episode? Have you been doing this to me for years, son? You want to make me look like a blithering idiot so that people...
Do you want me to show you the image on my phone? Here, I'll show you it, okay?
Yeah.
Be right. Be there.
All right, here it comes. Here it comes. You're just going to see a disembodied arm because White will never be seen.
Look at that. Look at that thing and tell me that looks normal.
Oh.
What is that?
It's as though she's like slid in like some kind of torso from the side and she's sitting there all like trying to avoid being shot by a sniper.
What is it? Why?
You're right. Here, son. Take. Ha ha. All right. Let's see who else is out here. We're just saying hi before we get going. Let's see. Who else is here? Whitey boy. Let's see. Rebecca Daly Dwyer, she's always here. Patrick Murphy, Patrick from Wichita. Saw you in OKC, the guy that prayed for you. Well, I appreciate prayers anytime, any place. Hey, Brad, I made it to the party. You sure did, Kelly George Pigeon. Hey, I know them. He's a good guy. He helped us today. I did. Son, did you know I was working with the fundraiser for UTT this past weekend? Did you know that?
I didn't know where you went.
I went to this fundraiser for UTT, which means what?
University of TT.
You know, listen, that thing keeps turning off. Is that normal?
Look. Give me the GoPro. I'll fix it. Okay? It's a settings issue. I'll fix that. Just hand it over. I'll fix it.
Well, it's setting me on fire with
it's
my
setting
fear.
me insane. Yes, I understand. And the audience clearly loves that beeping too.
I know. Okay, so who else is here? Let's see. Craig equals fun. I can only see one comment. Why you are haunted. It's
I am
true.
not haunted.
Edwin Ziegler. Edwina, thank you for saying my name properly. You got it, Edwina. Carrie Tudor, I just waved with you that all I know what I do. I just said that as though I had a brain injury. Craig and Edwin Ziegler, when are you coming to West Virginia? I'm in St. Albans, close to Charleston. I don't know when I'm coming. Wyatt, why do they ask me constantly, when are you coming to so-and-so? And then when I show up, guess what they don't do?
Show up?
Right.
Well, did you announce you were showing up then?
No.
Or did you show up unannounced?
Listen. To me, it's like guerrilla warfare. You don't want them to know you're there so they can't pick a target. I'm the only Christian conservative comedian in the world that uses Judeo-Christian worldview as social commentary, that fights back against political correctness. Why? Because I want to watch political correctness die in my lifetime. But first, I want to watch it suffer. I'm the one that has attacked and have gone after the wokies for years before anybody else jumped in line. I've got personal proof of albums saying that this PC is going to have to die or it's going to kill us. And yet now they're finally coming to the party and realizing this guy kind of was onto something. Now that we're on the edge of death, here we sit in America wondering if we're going to survive, because I've been praying for these folks to come to the party. Why they wouldn't come to the party? Why? Is it because they're scared?
Because you entered the party unannounced. They didn't know you were there.
But I was the life of the party. I brought my character.
You were the life of the party at a cemetery. So that's not really saying much now, is it?
Let me tell you something about cemeteries. Whenever I drive past a cemetery, do you know why they call it a cemetery, by the way?
Because you said Terry? Cement? Because tombstones are made of cement and are usually kept by a groundskeeper named Terry. Yes, that's exactly why they do it.
No. It's a mispronunciation of the word sedentary, because sedentary is what they see when they see the dead bodies, that they don't move, they're immobile, they're sedentary. And so they realize that this is a flock, a full acreage of sedentary people, and it's just simply a mispronunciation, because the guy that digs the graves has to get drunk to do that, because wouldn't you creep out? And so when you said, hey, where's the sedentary? He goes, the cemetery's over there. I'm in the cemetery. And that's how it was coined.
Okay, you almost convinced me that was actually the way that they came up with it.
Folks, you got to give me credit. I made that up on the fly and rocked it, because I'm God's comic, not you. You're God's henchman or God's janitor, White, and you know it.
Okay, so Carrie Hathaway sent another one of those creepy images, and this one moves!
Did she give us the rest of her body, or just were you dealing with another torso?
Just the torso, and again, this one moves. Why? Just...
Hey, look what
Dan... We're even fighting these things.
Wyatt, look what Dan Sutton said. You know Dan Sutton, don't you?
Yes, no.
Wyatt, Dan Sutton from the Sutton clan.
Yes, the Sutton clan of Dan.
Yeah. Well, anyways, here's what he said. He said, I gotta find him. He said, thank you, Saturday, for making my son laugh so hard his face hurt.
Well, why are people thanking you for hurting people's faces? That doesn't seem like a thing you should be celebrating, actually. You should probably go to the hospital about that.
And it's his own son, too.
Yeah, that's the weird part.
Hey, Pastor Erwin Noriega, D Division. Hi, Brad Stein. God bless you, bro. That's quite an interesting D Division. I don't know what that means. Tell us how you're doing that, Carrie. What is going on?
They were asking how she's doing these weird images. How are you not seeing these images?
If you haven't noticed, I went to the GoPro and showed everybody that everybody has access to my show in the comments but me.
The GoPro camera wasn't even focused on the image when you showed it to them after I did it.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me this woman has come up with some kind of imagery, figures, or whatever you call it, that nobody else can do?
Yeah, literally, Karen Boyd is asking how she's doing it. Nobody else knows.
You know who's got to know?
Nick Kress.
Yeah, of course. Nick Kress will know. He's St. Nick. He knows everything. He'll let you know he knows everything, too. And by the way, if it's a little hot or cold out, call Nick Kress if you're in Minneapolis. He's got his own heating and air conditioning company. And he's quite the mechanic, Wyatt. Do you know there's two other uses for the word mechanic? You know what the first word use is for?
I mean, mechanic basically works on anything mechanical. Hence the word mechanic.
Do you know what the other word might be? The other use of the word might be?
I'm gonna guess just somebody who builds, makes.
No, there's a card mechanic. In sleight of hand, the card mechanic is the one who can do sleight of hand.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Second deals, bottom deals, middle deals, Greek deals. He can con you with his cards. He's called mechanic.
And the really good ones can actually deal a fail hand.
Guess what? There's another use for mechanic. We actually made a movie about it. A hitman can be called a mechanic.
I have literally never heard that phrase ever used to describe that profession.
Why, you're 26 years old. You've pretty much literally never heard virtually anything that exists on Earth because you're somewhat retarded.
I have, however, heard the overabundance of the use of the word literally.
That's true. Richard Turney, fantastic card mechanic. See how Nick Kress jumped in and illuminated you on a card mechanic, Richard Turner, who, by the way, is blind. Now, I don't know why you think that's funny, because it's not. Why are you sitting there laughing that man's blind? It's not funny, Wyatt.
I'm not. I'm just laughing at the fact that now everyone's doing the weird image thing.
Okay.
How are you doing this?
What's that?
Do you seriously not see a single one of these images?
From who?
Darlene Williams, Kathleen Hood, Darlene Williams again.
What are they doing?
They're posting those image things that I don't understand and therefore feel. Oh, great. Now we've got Karen Boyd joining in on the fun and Bepin Menamin.
Devin
Menamin?
Yes.
That's such a...
It's difficult to pronounce, but she's one of our best fans, Wyatt.
And there's nothing wrong with how to announce your name. Oh, no, of course not.
Listen,
Make it harder next time, please.
I got to ask you a question. Now, I mean, last week you talked to us about the fact that Lowe's has gone in the birthday party business, and I'm sure it's just blowing up.
We are seriously so bugged. Yeah. They're already thinking of raising prices, from what I hear.
Okay. Well,
why?
Anyway.
How did this happen? What stars aligned in such the wrong way that this is allowed to exist?
Why? That's American ingenuity, though. A hardware store figured out a way to get more money. I think that's beautiful. I love it.
You know, actually, we had a party yesterday, actually, and it's funnily enough. The person who's in charge of running the birthday parties is my boss.
Okay.
So after she was done with it, I came up to her with this idea for the birthday parties. Okay, so we are basically Chuck E. Cheese, but for hardware enthusiasts, as I've said before.
Right.
Well, what does Chuck E. Cheese has? They have a mascot. Well, guess what? Lowe's has a mascot. I think it's only a company mascot. I don't think it's like a public thing.
Right.
But it's just this plank of wood with like a face called Plank.
Okay.
I proposed we make an actual Plank costume and have somebody dress up as it.
Okay.
Hopefully a minimum wage employee.
You mean like you?
Like me.
I think my favorite term in that entire soliloquy, and it was beautifully spoken, son, right off the cuff. But I loved your ingenuity for Plank. I love the fact that you're trying to take Plank and the birthday party concept to a whole...
Look, at this point, if you can't beat them, join them.
But here's what I loved the most when you were describing it. You referenced this subculture that I didn't know existed, but thank God for somebody like you, my son, to let me know. You said there are people out there, we laymen would only know as hardware enthusiasts.
It is a niche group, I will give you that.
I can't even grasp how little my life has been affected. And had I known that there was even an option to be a hardware enthusiast, you don't think I would have jumped in? Do you not think I would have ratcheted things up a little bit?
Well, I hate to throw a wrench in your plans, but it's a bit harder than just being an enthusiast. You have to have the dough to prove it.
Listen, I don't want to screw this up. So let's just try to nail it, hammer it home, and just leave it there in the mud so that we can cement this in the minds of all the folks out there.
Oh, really? Tell me more. It's quite fascinating.
We are taping, right?
Gosh, I hope not.
Okay. Listen, I got to tell you guys what I did over the weekend. This is important. Now, most of the people that jump on board watch our show regularly, but many watch later on, or they listen to the now launch onto Spotify, where you can go listen to this later. They jump on board. Why? Because I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a genius comedian. Did I ever tell you that?
Interestingly, I never quite noticed.
Yeah, I'm a comedian, and I have just this wonderful, amazing little countenance about me, this little ability to find the funny in places that they don't belong. Earlier, I made up this lie about how cemeteries were simply a mispronunciation of the word sedentary. You went for it. You fell for it. You were actually intrigued. I saw you taking notes. And
excuse me for trusting your wisdom, oh great comedic genius you.
Okay, well, it wasn't a wisdom. It was me conning you, scamming you on the fly in front of people live.
I mean, you have to be pretty wise to scam someone on the fly, no script or rehearsal.
Thank you. Thank you, son. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment, but I'm also not sure if it's an insult. Let's just call it neutral.
Well, anyways, I think it was quite a unique, ironic joke because we're going to play a clip today. You know,
Yeah, I was kind of setting that up for you to play the clip, and then you kind of just went past it, and I was just hoping you'd go back to it. Thank you so much for making my dreams come true tonight. I'm not sure about the audience because they haven't seen the clip yet, but, you know, at least me.
Perhaps you should have not mentioned that you were trying to set me up, thus giving the illusion that this went cohesively.
Okay, to be honest, I wasn't trying to set you up. I actually forgot about what the clip was, and then when I was halfway through my spiel, I remembered, oh, wait, the thing. Oh, I get it. He's adding on to it to help with the setup. Oh, now he's going to do the classic, and now let's go right into the clip thing. And then I watched as that ship sailed. Not only sailed, entered another hemisphere. It's now docked off the coast of Brazil.
Yeah, well,
and I have no idea how it got there.
Guess where they built that ship?
Canada.
Lowe's birthday party. Listen, I got to tell you something. I want you guys to remember that in the end, I am also a comedian. It brings most of the people on board, and then they come to find out this guy's kind of serious, and he also talks about God. And it throws them for a loop, and some people run away screaming and pulling their hair out, but others jump in and become whole new creations. So I don't know why God uses me, but he does. And so I'm going to throw you a little curveball. We're going to go back to my habitat, the thing that launched me and got people interested in the first place. We haven't done one for a while, so I thought let's play a little clip of an old clip from an album of mine called God's Comic. And just so you know, I didn't give myself the name God's Comic. That would be ridiculous. New Yorker magazine did an 8-page article on me in 2004, and they called me God's Comic on the online version. That's where it came from, and it became my nickname. I didn't ask for it. Do you think I would say I'm God's... Wyatt, do you think I would have the audacity to say I'm God's... I mean, that's some stones. Anybody that would want to put themselves in that category.
Would you call them gravestones?
Oh. Well, I guess you buried the lead. So let's jump in. Have a little laugh about dead people. In the beginning, it was good, and we messed up, and we're part of the lineage of that group of people. We brought on this earth what was never supposed to be here. Death! Why do you think we hate it so much? Because we weren't designed to die. Freaks us out. We don't even like looking at dead people. Do you want to look at dead people? Why do they make us look at dead people? They're creepy. Crying out loud, then they stick him in a casket. That's where Dracula lives. This is wrong. You know, if somebody fell dead right now, right outside there, we'd cover them up. Why? So you don't have to view them. Then we clean them up, put them in a suit, stick them in a coffin, and say, now go view them. I don't like it. They try to make it nice. Try to make it palatable. Hey, we'll do it in a home. We'll have it in a funeral home. Don't worry, it'll be in a home. You know what? I've got a home. There's hardly ever a dead guy in there. Matter of fact, if there was a dead guy in my home 16, I'd make you go in and get him out. Hey, there's a dead guy. Get him out of my house. I want to go home. I hate funeral homes. As soon as you walk in, there's too many doors. I never know which one has the dead guy. Is he in there? That's the rest of them. What's that man? I thought they stacked him up. I don't know what happens. Finally find that special door. There's the dead guy. Okay, there he is. This is terrible. I hate it. Can I leave now? No, you've got to go view him. What? I can see him from here. No, you've got to go up and pay your respects by staring at the dead guy. He doesn't care. Get up there! No one knows what to say. You start babbling because it's so ridiculously awkward. Yes, he looks so natural. That's what he looked like naturally? Might have been the first clue something's wrong with Grandpa. When he started stiffening up. Crying out loud, here comes the next group. They don't know what to say. They sound like bigger idiots. He looks like he's sleeping. Grandpa slept in a suit? With his glasses on? I didn't know that. I love it when they say that. Strangers will say that. He looks like he's sleeping. What do strangers know what I look like when I'm asleep? Is this happening? Am I going to bed at night and my neighbors are walking through my house? Where is he? There he is. I can't see him, Mommy. There he is, Tommy. Look at him. He looks like he's dead. Always some weird music playing. What is that music? It was his favorite. It was his favorite. How ironic. The one guy that liked this song, the only guy not here to enjoy it. Hey, listen, I gotta stare at a dead guy. Can you play a song I might want to listen to, please? Something to get me through this ordeal of staring at the dead guy. Maybe slap on a little Lady Gaga to get me through this stinking deal, huh? Poker face, poker face. And you don't get any gifts for dying because you failed. Is he still here? No. No cake for you. We don't give you anything for dying. Well, that's not true. We will give you flowers. So, just doing a little funeral home humor. That's what makes comedy beautiful. It should be able to make fun, laugh, find humor in anything, especially the hard things. You know, I've always told you guys that part of what makes comedy a unique art form is we are the jesters. We're the ones that can make fun of the king. I get our heads cut off. We're the ones that expose the rats. We're the ones that reveal the lies, the corruption. We bring it out into the open. We put it out there for people to deal with and have to say. Comics are crucially important because they take the wind out of the sails of those who think themselves better and more important than the rest of us. And so I want to let you see why I've stood so hard and so fast about controlling words and not allowing people to censor us. We cannot have a nation that will survive, and we are really on the precipice of death. It really is that bad. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it back, or maybe it'll somehow survive but never be free again, never be what it was. as we know, once this country's gone, there'll never be another free nation on earth because we'll be controlled by totalitarians. I mean, it has to be the rise up of the people. We learned that Americans will not rise up and fight when they're being their freedoms are being stolen, because they all bowed the knee to Baal when it came to Corona. We've talked about this a million times, but it frustrates me because I thought that we would see a rise of the American, and that's why I said I'm going to find a way to fight back, even if it doesn't work. I'm going to at least go down swinging. And that's when the militia of the mind was created. You know, this past weekend, Wyatt, I was telling you this. I was with John Guandola. Now, you guys have seen John Guandola on my show before. He's a ex-FBI agent. He was a Special Forces guy in the Army. And he created a group called Understanding the Threat. And he goes into different communities, and he basically explains and exposes people who are in the United States for nefarious reasons, people who want to harm and undermine the very fabric of America. This can come in religious perspectives. It can come certainly in philosophical and political guises, which is what we see throughout academia with the Marxist idea of wokeism. It's all corrupt, horrible cancer of communism or Marxism destroying our nation. They have to destroy because they can't build, because they've never created anything of beauty ever. All Marxism has failed regularly, and yet people want to continue to try it because people are deluded. They're buffoons. If you got rid of God, you're going to pull some kind of jackass idea out of your butt to try to make things work, and it won't, but you'll just keep living this nonsense over and over until you die and go to hell. That's how the game works. You got to either find the truth and get your balance, or you're going to pay forever. It's a big, big, big important decision that you make. So when I was working with John, we're raising monies for him to go out and build a bigger team that can go out and teach Americans how they can find threats in their community that are trying to tear down the original intent of the Founding Fathers and the Constitution. They're trying to destroy morality and family in the area, and how you can fight back. I told you, this is what I want to do. You cannot wait for D.C. They are not coming to protect you. They're the ones that are killing us. They're the corrupt ones. They're the traitors. They're the Judas. They are the Benedict Arnolds. Their names will go down in history as the evil ones that destroyed America. And they will die and they will burn, but right now we have to endure this. So I'm going to try to fight back. So the militia of the mind will be this idea of people like you who will all come together and outthink him, outlive him, outpray him, outlove him, outfight him, outstand for morality, never apologize, never back up, never not stand, even alone, for those things that are righteous and true. God will honor that. That's our only shot. And that's where I'm going to get the mighty 10,000. The first 10,000. It's a bunch, right? No, not in 50 million Americans? No, not so many. But the mighty 10,000 will be the first 10,000 that will donate $3 a month for us to grow this show. I want to get Wyatt on full time so he can learn some of these technical things. We've had a lot of fun joking about how crappy Wyatt is at running the production thing. But the truth is, he's done a great job. It wasn't his skill set, and he's learning on the fly. He's doing great. He's my son's smart kid. But he really needs to go full-time studying this so he can make it perfect for us. And you guys, as I've said a million times, literally built this thing from scratch. When it becomes what I believe God's going to make it become, you're going to get an equal reward because you helped make it happen. You show up, you've donated, you helped. So what I realize I'm going to do is there's people out there in America that are fighting back in their own little ministry, their own little 501c3, their own little charity, their own little conference. And I said, I'm not going to try to invent the wheel. I'm to reinvent it. I'm a comedian. I speak about free speech and religious liberties and the awareness of the control of words and manipulation of words. That's my specialty. And to let people know about God Almighty, that this is the only way you can survive and make it, is that God is honored and He revealed Himself in Christ. That's who I am. That's what I believe. I will not apologize. I'll go to my deathbed saying Jesus is God. And you can jump in and join me and find a balance you've never seen, or you can walk to hell on your own. That's up to you. I'm just giving you the message so that you have a chance to join the militia of the mind. And the mighty 10,000 will be the first 10,000 that do these donations. I'm going to have special shirts, I think, that will have the militia of the mind that will go out to all the people that volunteer, and they're going to have a special thing. I'm going to tell you about it more and more soon, once it's all in place to where you can actually start. Now, many of you already reached out and said, I want to get in. And I've told you, go to my website, contact, put your email, your name, address, and just say Mighty 10,000 in one of the lines, so I know that when we have the subscription ready and everything's ready, we can just send it out, contact you, you can jump in, and you will be some of the beginnings. And we will see if we can fight back. But John's understanding the threat, I realize, is a group that's already learning how to infiltrate the community and help us root out the bad guys. So he's going to be part of the militia of the mind. It's going to be an aggregate site where we're going to have people, ministries, groups that are doing the work from the ground up that you will have access to. We're going to have, as subscribers, we're going to be able to have some lectures that you guys can jump on for free because of the subscription that they'll be talking to you. You're going to be able to purchase at a small price. Special downloads so that you can train your kids, train your family, train your neighborhood. That's what's coming, guys. From this stinking podcast with a comic and doesn't know what he's doing, God said, I got an idea, and I want you to run with it. I also then went the next night to the Reese Theater in Plymouth, Indiana. I was born in Plymouth, Indiana. Now, I lived in Bremen, a little tiny town by South Bend, but my mom's doctor was in Plymouth, so she went to Plymouth, and I was birthed there. So I literally, one of the few times in my entire life, and I've been around. I've been in all 50 states, 7 or 8 provinces of Canada, Guam, the Cayman Islands, Australia, right, London, Germany. I've worked all over the world, but rarely can I ever say, hey, I'm working in the town of my birth. And I did. It was at the Reese Theater. It's a beautiful little theater. It used to be a movie theater. They've renovated it. They're bringing acts in that are coming live. It was fun. My sister was there. I had friends from school, from Bremen High School where I graduated, friends and family from Bourbon, Indiana, the pastor of a Methodist church my grandparents used to go to, he's been a fairly new pastor there. He was there. It was a full house. It was a blast. They were laughing, but they were watching the new material of the new comedy that's coming that I've already told you is called Laugh While It's Legal. That's going to be my next album. And then lastly, I was at the New Hope Church in Bedford, Indiana, with a pastor who, I'm not even going to tell you his name. I'm going to just give you a little clue. This guy, we were in this little town in Bedford, Indiana, little church, nice group of people. We had a blast. We laughed. We joked. We had a great time. He's got a southern accent, short hair. I'm figuring he's just a regular old rural pastor. Come to find out, this guy used to be the lead guitarist for a rock band called Faster Pussycat. And my wife, who used to be part of that scene in Hollywood, saw them and actually watched them because they opened for a band of that her boyfriend at that time. This was before me. I don't let her have boyfriends anymore. Why do you think I should let your mom have a boyfriend?
No? What?
Yeah, no, I know. I just wanted to see if you were paying attention. He nods.
I was paying attention, and now I wish I hadn't.
I know, it's weird. This is coming from the guy that issued from my loins. He is appreciative of the fact that I created him from whole cloth. Why? Maybe I shouldn't have used the whole cloth.
So, like what, the half cloth?
Maybe. Or maybe a loincloth. You should have left it with the sigh. It was perfect. No, you should have just let the sigh
honestly, I kind of forgot which part of the button turned my mic on and off, and I panicked.
Which part of the button? My son has...
Well, yeah, because when you click the button to mute the mic, it stays clicked until you do it again. And I completely forgot which one did which.
I see. Well, listen, folks, I want you to know that we are getting closer and closer to Stine Has Issues, reaching this next phase where we're actually going to be proactively in the streets, doing some damage for the kingdom while the getting's good. I can't wait to get you guys involved. I can't wait to... I think what I'm also going to do probably is have some interviews, Wyatt, with some of our original folks. Probably get Karen Boyd on, get Benjamin Gregory, certainly got to get St. Nick. I'm going to do an interview with them. Let them come on. That'll be part of the subscription, by the way, is talking to people. I'm telling you, I want to build an army, a militia of the mind in America. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it will do any good, but at least you'll know you're not alone, and you'll know that somebody is out there fighting for this nation, because I ain't better than you or different than you or more skilled than you. I'm just like you. I'm an American who wants to maintain his freedom, and I need you all to jump in with me. So this is what I've been doing over the weekend. I do come to churches. I come to conservative events. I've done some political things with conservative candidates. I do lots of fundraisers soon. In a couple weeks, I'm going to be at a pro-life fundraiser for a pregnancy resource center. Then I'm going to be up in Idaho with Rick Green doing a comedy and constitution show up in Boise. So I'm just trying to fight like a man while the getting's good. And Wyatt, I am a man, son. I'm a regular old guy just trying to hang on by a thread, even though he's got a weak heart. Got some calcium deposits, what they call it, plaque in my heart. So I could drop dead right now. And Wyatt, if I did, could you take over the show even though nobody could see you?
I mean, maybe not the Facebook Lives, but the Spotify would be good.
Okay. Well, that's true. You could do the Spotify. Folks, maybe what we'll do is as we get closer and closer and the subscriptions build and this podcast gets larger, that maybe we'll even have a contest to see if the winner will get to see Wyatt. Nobody's ever seen him. Maybe that'll be a contest. Maybe a big donor will get to see it. We'll have a headshot of Wyatt that he'll sign and send you, because nobody ever gets to see him, because that's just a little gimmick we came up with. And Wyatt, did you ever think you'd grow up to be a gimmick?
I mean, I didn't necessarily think it was out of the question, but I didn't think it happened so soon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're my little gimmick. Well, son, I got to tell you something. We've got a great guest today. I want to tell you guys a little preface before I bring this wonderful woman on. I told you guys that a few years ago, a man reached out to me who has a studio in California, and he wanted me to do a podcast, and I said I didn't really want to do it because I figured nobody's going to watch. It's going to be too difficult. And through some negotiating and navigating, I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you will film it instead of just doing it as an audio thing, if you'll actually film it, then what I will do is I will come on and I will write some scripts, and we'll do like a 10-minute rant, and we will see if we can maybe come up with some sketches. It was kind of the beginning of trying to figure out what Stine Has Issues was. I said, I'll do that, and let's see if it gets anywhere. Let's see if it gains some traction. And so I filmed. I'd go in, for 2 days, I'd film 20, 30 episodes, and they'd show up every week. And then after a few months, when they were getting used up, I'd fly back there and we'd shoot more. I didn't get paid. Still haven't been paid. Wyatt gets paid a tiny little stipend. I send him, but I don't get paid because I guess I'm not worthy, even though I write the stuff and sit in front of the mic and make all the funny stuff and people come to see me. Why should I get anything for that, Wyatt? Why should I be able to eat food when all I'm doing is the entire show, and you're just trying to find which part of the button to push.
Look, pal. Let's get one thing clear here. I could replace you with a sock puppet.
Yeah.
You could not replace me with, well,
a
really
monkey.
Not anyone who would do it for the prices I'm asking for.
Monkey could do it. Monkey. I could get a trained monkey to push the buttons the way you do, son.
Okay, but who would train the monkey, huh? How much would it cost to train the monkey?
Well, I'd have you train him to get you out of
You think I would train my replacement?
You would train the monkey because you'd think he was cute.
Nah, I'm kind of more of a tortoise person.
Okay, well, if you're a tortoise guy, who am I to judge?
I mean, tortoises can do the job too. They're just a lot slower at it. Actually, it turns out turtles are actually pretty fast when they want to be. The issue is that they just don't want to be.
I will tell you this, though. If you ever hire a turtle, they do a shell of a job.
Have you actually seen a turtle, like, run? It's kind of creepy because they move, like, genuinely fast.
Wyatt, you stepped on my line. I said, and I'll say it again, if you ever hire a turtle, they do a shell of a job.
Oh, I understood your joke. That's why I ignored it.
Okay, well, let's get to the guest because she really is a lot smarter than me. She's got a lot more accolades than me, and she is somebody that I really admire. You know, when I told you about the militia of the mind, I'm going to expect things from you guys, and part of that is you're going to have to start studying. You're going to have to start reading. You're going to have to start learning some philosophy. You're going to have to start learning some apologetics. You're going to have to start learning some worldview. You're going to have to start learning the difference between conservatism and leftism. You're going to have to start learning how to tell the difference between that which is woke and broken and anti-American and anti-First Amendment, how to call people on it, and how to fight and defend to drive this cancer back into the hellhole it crawled out of. This is what I'm going to demand from you guys. You want to jump in and be a militia of the mind? You're going to have to do some damage. You're going to have to get risky. You're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to put yourself and your butt on the line. This is what war looks like. Let's see what happens. Hopefully, some of you were warriors this week suddenly, and if you were, write it down. Where did you stand up for something? Where did you not apologize? Where did you stand up and say, you will not steal my freedom, my liberties? Did you do it this week? We need to encourage each other. We need to see this thing fester and grow until it becomes something so powerful they can't ignore us. And that's what we're shooting for. And this woman is somebody that I've read books from, all of her books. They're wonderful, wonderful. She's a philosopher. She teaches at, I think, Baptist, is it Houston? I forgot. Oh, she says it. I just blanked on her. This is a book that you should get. It's called Finding Truth. I read it a long time ago. They use it actually in a lot of Christian seminaries and Christian colleges. Finding Truth by Nancy Pearcey. It is a great primer for just getting an understanding of Christian worldview. 5 principles for unmasking atheism, secularism, and other God substitutes. You know, everything I know, if I know anything, came from 2 sources. One, I'm an autodidact. I do all my own reading and my own studying on my own time and through my own meditation. I take all the information of people smarter, better than me, and then I think about it and I reason with it. I try to outthink these ideas and see if I can fashion them into something that has something, and then I give them back to you in the form of comedy or in the form of a rant. That's what I do. And so I want you to know that who we have on right now is a very, very sophisticated and well respected philosopher in the United States of America. We had Princeton law professor Robert George on a while back. She's in that league, in that category. And she's somebody you should know because she has some books out there. Let's see, was it Saving Leonardo, I think? There's some wonderful books of hers out there. You need to get them, start reading them. But Finding Truth is really a great one just to give yourself a good foundational idea of Christian worldview and how truth can be destroyed and ruined and jettisoned if you're not vigilant. But you can learn that. And she's going to talk about that book, but other things about what's going on Earth. She has another book that we will be referencing in the interview, Love Thy Body. And it deals with transgenderism and all the issues that are really coming to a head here in America. So that's another great book if you want to deal with this whole idea of the body and the soul and how does it work and is it sacred and is the body something that should be respected and is that what's going on as it's not being. These are the things we're going to discuss. But I wanted to let you know this was filmed a while ago in the original studio of the beginning of Stine Has Issues, so it's not going to look like this studio. It's an older one. I've been saving this to let you have something special to watch and let you know even more so the type of talent and people that I'm honored and blown away will be coming on this show. We are going to fight. We are going to win. No matter what, God wins every time. But folks, I'm going down swinging. I need you to go down with me. So enjoy this incredible opportunity to have a personal one-on-one interview with philosopher, Christian, strong, powerful, intelligent woman of God and my sister in Christ. Enjoy an interview with Nancy Pearcey. Hey folks, it's God's comic Brad Stine, and once again, Brad Stine Has Issues is here, but this is a brand new special edition. I'm adding some very interesting people into my little database, people that are much more famous than me, much more rich than me. They're all loaded, every one of them, and they're much smarter than me, which, by the way, isn't hard to do. But I did want to bring in people that I really respect and admire to talk about issues that matter in America, in the Christian world, in the evangelical world, and basically in the human culture at large, because that's what my comedy's always done, and that's what my books have done, and my documentaries, all the crazy things God got me into, because apparently he's got nobody left to use but me. That's how pathetic things have become. But here I am, and I'm going to launch this new episode that will bring on a guest with someone who I have respected and admired for many, many years. I think maybe the most underappreciated philosopher in the country. And it's a sad shame, because I like lots of philosophy. If you've watched Brad Stine Has Issues, if you watch my comedy, I'm the only Christian comic that used Christian worldview as my social commentary within comedy. That was what I wanted to do. It was unusual. It was like Richard Pryor would talk about the black experience, or a woman talks about the woman experience. I'm saying, hey, here's how God sees things. Here's how Christians see things. So that's what I've always tried to do with my comedy. And I couldn't have gotten there. I couldn't have done those things if I hadn't, studied people who are smarter than me and had done the hard labor of really unpacking Christian worldview and really explaining the ideas in the deeper, nuanced ways, so I could try to find a way to funny those up and to contemplate these ideas. And as much as there's many philosophers and apologists out there that I'm a big fan of, William Lane Craig's or John Lennox or Francis Schaeffer's or whatever, one of the people that I have respected in a unique way, in a special way, is our next guest. And my first guest, Professor Nancy Pearcey. The reason that I'm a big fan of hers is because not only is she an intellectually robust in her thoughts, but what I really love is she's one of the only ones that really takes these important issues of Christian worldview and applies them to what is actually happening in culture in real time, so we can actually use these as ways, as tools, as weapons to defend our faith in a way that sometimes you have to figure out. If somebody's just giving you a broad perspective of Christian worldview, you got to figure out, how does this apply to transgenderism? How does this apply to abortion? How does this apply? She does the work for you. And so, big fan. And so first, let me introduce Professor Nancy Pearcey to the show. Hi, Professor.
Hello. Thank you for that introduction. And I do appreciate very much that your humor has always involved Christian worldview issues. It goes a lot deeper than typical humor does. So I've been a fan of yours as well.
Oh, well, that's very kind. You might want to raise the bar, I'm saying, in your career. I'm just letting you know, because normally people that come on my show are doing it by court order. So I'm glad that you chose to come on. But listen, I could sit and gush about you forever, but I will say that what I would like to do is use this privilege, and I do say that truly, to speak with you about, in a small time, we only have about an hour, but in a small time, I want to not only begin to understand in a simple way, the best we can, Christian worldview, just the basic undergirdings of it, but then bring it into more specifics culturally. But then, of course, I'm going to reference your books and so forth, because the truth is, if one thing has broken my heart in the church in America, is people just don't study. There's just this lack of intellectual commitment to understanding the ideas that God has given us. I believe that the Bible is the rule book of reality, that it truly is not just a religious tenet, but it's literally telling us, here's how the world works. Here's the reality that you need to know. Well, obviously you believe that too, but you found out ways to do that are very important. So I thought it might be quick for those who don't know you. And if you don't know who she is, what is wrong with you people? You've got books to buy. I'll tell you about them in a moment. But I thought it might be important that I quickly ask you just a simple bio. So you got started, if I'm not mistaken, with Francis Schaeffer. Is that the one who first started teaching you about Christian worldview and how it applies in regular life?
Oh, absolutely. I became a Christian through the work of Francis Schaeffer. So he had a huge impact on my life, clearly. The backdrop is that I was raised in a Christian home, a Lutheran home. I say Lutheran because it was very ethnic. I don't know if you realize, all Scandinavians are Lutheran.
Okay.
And just like Italians are Catholic, right? So my father was Swedish, my mother's Norwegian, and when I started having questions about my faith in high school, they had no idea how to answer it because for them, it was, well, you're Swedish, what else are you going to be? So when I was attending a public high school, all my textbooks are secular, all my professors are secular, and I just started wondering, how do we know that Christianity is true? That was it. That was really the only question I was asking. And my parents couldn't answer, my pastors couldn't answer. I'll tell you, I talked to a Christian university professor, and I asked him point blank, why are you a Christian? He said, works for me. I said, that's it.
So a very subjective perspective. I mean, there's no sense that he saw this as reality, but just his point of view.
Right, and very pragmatic, right? It works for me. When I had to tell him, sorry, it's not working for me anymore. Right. And I had a chance to talk to a seminary dean, and I thought, well, I'll get something more substantial here. And all he said was, don't worry, we all have doubts sometimes. As though it was a kind of a psychological phase that I would outgrow.
Right.
And so about halfway through high school, I was pretty young, I don't know, 15, 16, I decided that Christianity must not have any answers because I sure wasn't finding them.
Yeah.
And I made a very intentional decision to leave my Christian upbringing behind and to embark on a search for truth. I decided it was up to me to find out which worldview, which philosophy, which religion was really true. So I was very self-consciously looking for truth. And I realized pretty rapidly that if there was no God, then there was no objective truth, right? Because who's out there to give you the truth? Who has the universal objective perspective? I sure didn't. I realized that, with my puny little teenage brain, that there was no way I would have any real chance of finding objective, universal, absolute truth. I mean, it struck me as ridiculous. How could you be anything but a relativist and a skeptic?
Which is all you hear in academics anyways at that time, right? I mean, so you didn't have anybody within the community of learning that would have given you any other way to think but relativism, materialism, right? I mean, how long has that been really the forefront of the intellectual approach in academics since, the 60s, 70s? I don't know, when it really became the only way to see the world.
Good point. So I wasn't getting it from my Christian world, and I wasn't getting it from any alternative from the secular world either. And so I pretty rapidly went into pretty extreme relativism, skepticism. I was the one, still in high school, I was the one in my friend group who was arguing that there was no right or wrong. My friend, in a gossip session says, oh, she's so wrong. And I'm the one who jumps up and says, you can't say anyone's right or wrong.
Yeah. And this is in the 70s?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, no, excuse me, this was late 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because I went to L'Abri for the first time in 1971, and you can see that with my secular mindset, I was perfect material to end up at Francis Schaeffer's ministry, which was called L'Abri. And the reason I got there was I was going to school in Germany. We had lived there when I was a kid, so I'd gone back. And through a series of circumstances, I ended up at L'Abri, which is in Switzerland, not far off. And, well, people sometimes ask me, why did you go to a Christian ministry if you're not a Christian? And the answer was that I had some family members who were stopping through. And they said, hey, we're going to be at this place for a weekend. Oh. Why don't you come see us? So I didn't go to L'Abri to go to a Christian place, let me tell you. Okay. I was not interested in anything Christian by that time. But I went to see my family members. And I was stunned by L'Abri because it was the first time I had ever encountered Christians who spoke of Christian worldview and apologetics. I had no idea Christianity could be supported by good reasons and logic and arguments. And the staff at L'Abri actually knew the secular worldviews that I was immersed in better than I did because they'd studied them. Yeah. So they knew what my questions were. They knew what my questions were, and they knew how to answer them from a Christian perspective. I was so astonished. I just never seen anything like that before.
Right.
And as you know, it was also a place where people lived in Christian homes. So you were also seeing a level of Christian love and community that you'd never encountered before.
Yes.
For many people, the community was as persuasive as the apologetics, because
Right.
you saw people actually living it, right? They weren't just talking it.
Right. Well, it's like going to the person who's in need of Christ, but they're hungry. It's like, you know what? Feed them first. Give them a cup of water first, and then maybe they'll give you a listen to the rest. Well, you were watching people living a community that was enticing. Wait, this is legit. This actually applies to every part of your life, and that's what Christian worldview is. It's not saying, and this is what, I mean, you were the one, and I guess you're not laying claim to this perspective, but you certainly, for me, brought it up, and that was the fact-value split. The idea that we put categories as to our spiritual dimension as more of a subjective feelings approach as opposed to facts, what is actually true. Well, that completely controls culture now. Completely controls culture. There's no nuance to it. To such a degree that feelings now create reality. That I didn't see coming. So,
Yes. Yeah.
Little did we know that when feelings become something that is subjectively okay for you, but here's the fact of value, how did it slip into existential reality, how our feelings, could you quickly kind of explain to us, where did we get that huge leap to not postmodern, but post-truth? How did we get there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And really, that was the major theme that I took from Labrie. Francis Schaeffer was the first person who explained to an evangelical audience that the concept of truth itself had been split. He didn't use the term fact-value split. I was the one who kind of drew that together later in my book, Total Truth. Nobody had seen the connection.
Yeah.
They'd seen, okay, Schaeffer talks about how truth itself has been split. Well, by that, I mean this. Every culture has essentially known that there's a natural order and there's a moral/spiritual order.
Right.
But all cultures have thought that they formed together an integrated unity. And therefore, truth would also be an integrated system of thought. And it was really only in the modern age, since the rise of modern science, that many people in the West began to say, no, the only reliable truth we have is science, what can be empirically
and this was
known.
Enlightenment thinking?
Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Right. Enlightenment was essentially sparked by the scientific revolution. They were trying to make sense of this new form of knowledge.
Which was sparked by Christians. So since we started with science, how did they lose that? Well, I mean, I know you'll talk about that later, but it's funny how everything that really matters in the West, that gives it substance, that gives it power, that created something unlike any other civilization, was essentially created by Christian worldview, by the way they saw the world, and then they jettisoned that and try to. I always said that leftism is like a parasite. It finds a healthy host because it has nothing to contribute, sucks all the value out of it, leaves the host as though there's still an edifice that matters, and then they inject it with their nonsense and think it's still going to work. And of course it can't. But you've proven that so clearly in your books, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Right.
I don't have so much time, and it's such a pleasure to speak to somebody like you who can articulate some of the ideas that I read about, but I need to ask a little bit more clarity.
Well, let me answer the question about science, because that's a good point. You have to stop and say, well, wait a minute, where did science even come from? Right. And I often summarize it this way. I have a whole book on the subject. It's called The Soul of Science.
I read it.
Good for you.
I read all your books. Big fan. I do want a percentage, though, when we start selling these. Just saying. I want a piece. That's all I'm asking.
But here's kind of the nutshell. Today we talk about laws of nature, natural laws, as if everyone just knows that. But before the rise of modern science, most cultures did not think there were laws of nature, because they did not think that there was a rational mind behind nature.
Right.
And there's a well-known, respected historian of science who says, he's not a Christian, but he says, no other culture, East or West, ancient or modern, has spoken of laws in terms of nature. It grew specifically out of Western Europe when it was dominated by Christian worldview. And because they thought of God as not only the lawgiver, but creator and lawgiver. So as he creates, he gives laws to what he creates. Well, that's kind of the nutshell, is that there's a term as central to the scientific enterprise as laws of nature did not arise in any other culture except Christianized Europe.
Right.
So that would be just an example. There's lots of other things that science took from Christianity, but that's kind of like the core.
Right. But when you talk to me about the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, and that began the materialization, the scientism, the worship of the secular, essentially, ironically came out of a science that they lay claim to that came from Christians. So it's just an odd disconnect. And I know there have been folks who have tried to say there was a split even of science and Christianity or religion. That was done out of animus. That apparently, and I forgot the guy's name, you would know, guys that literally wanted to separate them and create this slanderous idea that Christianity had was a wall against growth of science and whatever, when in fact we created it. So I stand for those. I want Christians to understand their legacy, to understand what you're part of, what our people have done because of Christ, because of his insight, because, as I said, the rule book of reality is the Bible. It doesn't claim to be a religious book that you might be inspired by. It says, you want to know how the world works? You want to know the ultimate question, the meaning of life? Here it is. I'll show you how we get there. Oh, and by the way, if that's not enough, I'll create stuff around you just to show you how big I am. So the laws of nature, like you said. So let me ask you this then, just again, because there's so much that you have to share and there's only so little time. So I'm trying to give little nuggets to my people because I want them to not only get to know your work, but apologists, philosophers in general that have a Christian worldview, because we don't have any more time in America to not study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. This laziness in American Christianity, this taking it for granted, it's long gone. There's no time left. You better not only say you're a Christian, you better be willing to articulate it in the public sphere, and you better be willing to die for it, because that's been our history as well. There's a cost to actually believe this is true. And you've taken this dangerous route with your books of bringing up cultural issues of the time that have become such hot button issues that you can't even talk about them now on some platforms without being thrown off. Obviously, transgenderism, homosexuality, abortion, women's rights, and things along that nature. So let me ask you this. I wanted to first talk about the facts-value split, and you said that was kind of a term you coined to find a way to split up what Francis Schaeffer was saying was the fracturing of immutable truth.
Well, hold on, I didn't coin it.
Okay.
What I did is Francis Schaeffer used a metaphor of two stories in a building,
Right.
and to show that you had kind of a lower story where people put facts and scientific observation and what was empirically knowable and testable, and so that was considered the only real reliable form of knowledge. That's where ultimate truth was. And then anything that did not fit that, anything like morality and theology, you can't stuff them in a test tube and study them under a microscope. And so essentially this upper story was created where you could put things that are meaningful to a lot of people, but they're no longer considered truths because they're not directly scientifically verifiable.
Right.
And so the split view of truth. Now, Schaeffer, you talked about split view of truth, but nobody quite knew what that sounded a little bit esoteric. And it was I was doing a study on the fact-value split later for a book review I was publishing, and all of a sudden it hit me what the secular world had already coined the phrase fact-value split.
Okay.
But nobody had applied it to what Schaeffer was doing. Because Schaeffer had this weird upper story, lower story metaphor that nobody quite knew what to do with.
Did he just come up? Did he contemplate that himself, or where did that even come from?
Yeah, that's once I became a Christian, you have to read the book because it is a little unexpected.
Yeah.
Most people, my students say the same thing. My students will say, "Well, wait a minute. If you're a materialist, aren't you saying that the material world is the only thing of ultimate value?" and I have to explain to them, you can say the material world is all that exists and still have a low view of it by saying it was created by mindless, purposeless forces and has no intrinsic purpose or dignity.
We are rolling, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we can cover that, and since it's a common question, we could cover that a little later when we get to that.
I just didn't know if I wanted to bring him up specifically. I didn't.
No, bring him up specifically.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Look at you. Now to say, I'm going to take down Bill Craig. All right. So where were we? Do you remember when we got?
Yeah, you actually asked, did Schaeffer make up the imagery of two stories in a building?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess can I call you Nancy?
Nancy?
Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
Because you are my sister in Christ, right? So let's pretend like because Professor's getting old and it makes me feel stupid. Makes me feel dumb because I'm not a professor. Clearly, the only professor I'm aware of was on Gilligan's Island. And look where that got him. But so, Nancy, I did want to ask you again about the idea of truth. One of the things I've done in my comedy is I don't talk about Christian ideas or worldviews and say, here's my take on this. I just presume it's real. I just act like it's true, it's real, and you draw your own conclusions. Well, clearly, nothing has been more destructive. And my big fight for 20-something years has been on cultural Marxism and political correctness and the destruction of Western freedom and liberties through Marxist thought and its inculcation in a culture. Now, that doesn't sound like a typical category a comedian would tackle. But as I said to you, I've been called to a ministry. I didn't know this. I didn't want this. I just wanted to be a comic. Trust me. And what I learned was if God calls you to something, it goes without repentance. There is no other way out. It's like being made in the mafia. God uses you until he kills you. So I woke up on the beach in whale vomit enough times to say, I think I better head to Nineveh because I've been called. And here I am. So these ideas are important to me. And one of the things that I wanted to say about your books that I didn't mention is that I got a library of books on philosophy, apologetics, logic, reason, theology, because it interests me. Well, it doesn't interest most Christians, but it should. And we have a history of it being the most important things in our lives because it's why culture changed. We had a perspective nobody had thought of before, nobody had seen before. And not only that, it worked. It literally changed people's lives and gave them a dignity they didn't have before. Well, that can only exist if there's truth, if there's an actual true way to see the world, a compass that can get us back on track if we get off track. So Francis Schaeffer and his truth, and I read his books too, is such a crucial element because with relativism, there's really nowhere to go. I can't even reason with you anymore because reason becomes suspect or my misogyny or my Western European values. I mean, the nonsense, the cancerous nonsense that leftism is doing to even destroy logic and reason as something we can count on. Where do we go? I can't even have a conversation anymore if the truth doesn't bear out in the end. So you're in academia, though I guess a Christian university, though some of those are suspect nowadays. Do you see almost having to reteach that truth exists, immutable, transcendent, unmovable, absolute truth is the only way we can have a conversation about any of these ideas we're discussing in America, in the world right now? Does that make sense to you? Is it worse than it was?
It makes such total sense that I'll start by telling you how I myself had to go through that battle in becoming a Christian. I was such a skeptic and relativist by the time I went to L'Abri, Francis Schaeffer's ministry, that I had to go through a two-step process. And Schaeffer writes about this, how a lot of people have to go through a two-step process, and that was me. I had to first be convinced that there was such a thing as universal, absolute, objective truth before I could even consider whether Christianity was that truth. And Schaeffer warned that for a lot of people today, you have to take that two-step process. He called the first step pre-evangelism. In other words, before you could even help people understand what Christian truth claims are, you have to explain to them what we even mean by truth. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the two-story metaphor that truth itself has been split into two stories, and in the lower story, that's where most people still will consider absolute truth, but that's been reduced to just science.
Right.
So whatever is beyond science, whether it's morality, theology, religion, and so on, is put into this upper story where it's not considered truth at all.
Yeah.
So Schaeffer's main message to the Christian world was, until you understand this concept of truth, you will not be effective in explicating Christian truth to the world.
Right.
So it really was central to his whole message.
So talk to me about, is there a, and I don't want to make it a gimmick, but is there a trick? Is there something that's kind of simplistic to help the typical Christian, non-Christian, who's going through school, going through culture, on their phones, whatever, who just assume that life is relative, ideas are relative, there is no absolute truth? How did Francis Schaeffer begin to help someone like you, who clearly is smart, who went in to fight? You weren't there to receive some revelation. You were there to mock this absurdity you'd already abandoned, and something helped you understand. How did I not see that? Is that too much of a question, or does that make sense?
No,
is there a way to start there?
Once again, you're getting to the heart of what Francis Schaeffer did. The heart of his apologetics was to say, okay, let's take your worldview and see if it fits the real world. And he called it the practical test. It's like the scientist who takes his theory into the lab and sees whether the chemicals in the test tubes really do react the way his theory says. Well, if you're talking about a worldview, then you're asking, how do we test our view of the world?
Yeah.
So it's very comprehensive, but you can break it down to individual questions. So I was a total relativist. So the Labrie staff, which included Schaeffer, but also the people he trained, basically took me aside and said, okay, can you live it? Can you take your moral relativism into the real world and live that way? And as you know, Brad, nobody lives as though morality were relative. Everybody has some moral issues that they believe are absolutely true, true to the real world, not just I don't like it, not just I disapprove, because that's what the moral relativists say. Morality is just what you don't like, what you don't approve. Well, everyone has things. They may not be the same issues as you have, but it might be feminism and gay rights or something. But nonetheless, the point is that they do believe that there is a moral universe and there are certain moral truths. So nobody can really live as though moral relativism were true. Another issue for me actually was determinism. I had enough science background to think that we were all basically complex machines and couldn't make choices anyway.
Right.
The answer to that is just pay attention to yourself. In other words, from the moment you wake up in the morning, you are making choices.
Yeah.
There's one philosopher who's not even a Christian, but he says if somebody doesn't believe in free will, then when they go to the restaurant, they should say, just bring me whatever the laws of nature have determined that I will get.
Right. Right.
And
Let me ask you
simple.
this. I'm sorry.
This is very simple.
Go ahead.
It's a very simple, very practical way that you can test worldviews is, can people actually live by them?
Right.
Because we are actually made in God's image. We actually live in God's world. And so there will be a constant tension between our worldview and our real self and the real world that God created.
Right.
And finding that point of tension is what Schaeffer's apologetics was about.
Well, and we could talk about the nuances of these philosophies and tear them apart, and that's not complicated. One thing I've always been curious about in determinism is, if determinism is true, like a Sam Harris might believe, or maybe Daniel Dennett, I'm not sure how many of them are determinists, I would say to you, well then, if that's true, why do you get angry at me for being a Christian? I had no option. Why are you angry at me for saying that what you believe is untrue? I was determined to reach that conclusion, which means you have nothing to be angry about. Not only that, there's nothing for you to find. They are so much about worship of science. Science is the arbiter of truth. Science is where we find absolute reality and objectivity. And it's like, there's nothing to find. There's no truth. You were just told to think that way. Somebody else was told to think that way. We don't know what's happening. We were created or designed that way. So don't get angry at me. Don't get mad that I haven't chosen. I thought I did.
Right.
It's an illusion that I disagree with you. And by the way, your conclusion that you find to be so robust, you didn't come up with that.
Right.
So there's nothing to be grateful for. One of the things I always think that blew me away is the nihilism that has to be the foundation of all true atheism, as Nietzsche said first. If that's true, I said, you guys, write a 500-page book describing the meaningless of life, and you find meaning in your conclusions. You can't even get out of the gate having a conversation about meaninglessness without giving it substance. So the absurdity of the world they live in. So what is that? Because where do we find the difference between thinking that there's an intellectual approach to helping people come to a place of revelation and assuming as Christians that there's also a spiritual Holy Spirit element that has to somehow also engage them in the other part of their reality, their spiritual realm? Can we intellectualize somebody into the faith, or is that more of a pre-evangelism, and then what happens from there is between you and the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, that might be a good way of putting it. People sometimes say you can't be argued into the kingdom, and I say, well, I sort of was, people say, why'd you become a Christian? It's because these arguments persuaded me. The arguments against relativism, against skepticism, against determinism, against scientism. These arguments I found persuasive.
Yeah.
Like I said, I came to it, from a position having never heard any arguments.
Right.
And so today I think it's sometimes harder with young people because they've gone on these atheist websites and they've already thought through a lot of the arguments. And so I think it's actually harder today because they come often forearmed with all of these arguments from secular websites. Yeah. But I wanted to also make sure we cover your earlier question, which was, I think you put it this way. You said, how is it that today feelings override any view of truth?
But not only override them, but literally create reality. If I feel this way, it becomes truth. So that is a step I don't know that's ever existed in history. You would know better than me. I feel like they're in a different category philosophically. They've taken the secular faith split and given it a power that's never existed before. A religious mysticism that is deeper than anything we have ever imagined. So is there a precedent for that, or is this something new?
It's new. It's new in the modern age. Now, new means from starting with Immanuel Kant, so 1700s. But when you talk to historians, that's the modern age, right? They mean the 17th, 18th century. So, it all goes back again. This is why the split view of truth is so important. It goes back to the split view of truth because a minute ago, you're talking about Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris, and they're all in the lower story. For them, the truth is scientism. That's almost their alternative religion. That science explains everything. When you add the ism there, you mean that it's turned into an ideology that's seen as the ultimate truth and rules out everything else. Well, they're in the lower story.
Yeah.
But Francis Schaeffer's insight, and this is largely because he lived in Europe, which was ahead of the U.S. on this. They were into postmodernism before we were, and so that's why he became prophetic and was able to see that there was this upper story that was developing, where truth is a social construct, truth is a matter of your internal experience and feelings, and it's existentialism in the 70s. Today it's postmodernism, deconstructionism, but these are all upper story isms.
Yeah.
And what's happened is they've all taken us by surprise. Like when we started finally getting into the moral issues, ethics is in the upper story, and that's why issues like transgenderism are hitting us, and we didn't know where it came from. Transgenderism says, hey, who cares about science? Who cares about biology? Well, all that matters is your internal feelings and sense of self. And Christians are like, wait a minute, where's this coming from? We've been so busy crafting apologetics against the lowest story, against the rationalism, the scientism, naturalism, materialism, these lowest story science-based worldviews, or they claim to be science-based, that we haven't paid attention to what Schaeffer called the upper story, which was this whole other stream of thought. If you want the if you want the philosophical labels, the lowest story is analytic thought, and the upper story is continental thought. And so you realize then, there's this whole coherent history of thought, all in the upper story, which is, and the problem is that most apologists, especially in America, have been trained in analytic. They've been trained in how to counter the sort of lowest story worldviews. And they have not been trained in continental thought. So they have not been trained in how to respond to the ideas like existentialism and postmodernism. But that's what's hitting us now. Let's, we could get into the issues in my book, Love Thy Body.
Right.
And the most obvious being transgenderism, where transgender activists explicitly argue that your gender identity has nothing to do with your biological sex. And kids are coming home from kindergarten now saying, my teacher told me that being a boy has nothing to do with having boy parts, and being a girl has nothing to do with being girl parts. So what am I, Mommy? I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
So would this be true? If the lower story is the substantive hard science, that which we can observe and repeat and formulate ideas and actually see the conclusions, as opposed to a transcendent idea philosophy which is outside of the material world thoughts. If my feelings, like you said, which are normally upper story, now take on substance, I feel like I'm this, and you have to agree. Are they somehow moving feelings into the lower story, and it's becoming truth? In this odd, abstract way, they found a way to make a subjective truth a reality that not only they get to exist, which people have done for years, but now I have to force you to live with me, and you have no options. I mean, would it be that serious that they've turned it into a foundational truth that can't even be argued? Does that make sense, or am I overstating the case?
As usual, you're right on target.
As usual, she said. See, I'm not stupid. Kind of, thanks to your book.
So, I teach this in my classes. So I have the students do a timeline. I say it starts with Kant. Kant is the first person who really said there's a split view of truth. There's two realities, and they are contradictory. In other words, if the lowest story were true, we would be complex biochemical machines with no free will. But Kant wanted to retain freedom and dignity, so he made this upper story where he said, well, somehow, even though freedom is impossible in the lower story, somehow we still assert it. And so obviously the upper story becomes irrational.
He's the one that said as if. I mean, we have to live as if, Yeah, right. Because otherwise, like you said, there's nowhere to go. If the very fact that I can't live as though life has no meaning, the very fact I can't even live that way should give you some, if you're prescient, pause to go, maybe my worldview isn't sustainable. I mean, if I can't live by it and I have to borrow from an antithetical worldview, maybe I need to reconsider. So Kant was trying to give value to the transcendent, right, to the subjective mind, or the values, hopes, dreams, and in fact did sort of gave access to the materialist to see a way to take some power.
Well, even in his own day, he was accused of making the upper story into useful fictions. That's the as-if mentality. It's not true. There is no such thing as free will. Science tells us that. But we have to live as if we had free will, because nobody can survive without that. So he turned the whole upper story. We have to live as if morality was real, or, people would have no meaning to their moral choices. So, but what's happened, I wanted to get to what you said about the upper story has almost overtaken the lower story.
Or taken on form, a shape, a material. Does that make sense? Because if I'm forced to live by it, they give it a structure it hasn't had before, which it went from subjectivity to objectivity, even though I don't see it. I'm forced to live in your story. That seems different than other philosophies.
Well, what happened is from the beginning, there was a competition between the two stories because nobody can really live with that kind of split mindset. We all strive for a unified worldview. That's just human nature. And so the lower story is constantly trying to take over the upper story and say, well, morality isn't real. It's just a product of natural selection. Religion isn't real. We just have the God gene that's evolved because it was useful for social, for social conformity and unity. So the lower story is constantly trying to take over the upper story. But the upper story is doing the same thing, and we have not been as aware of that because it's not taught. Continental philosophy is not taught in most university philosophy departments. It's taken over English and the social sciences.
Well, maybe you should, if you can briefly, so what is continental philosophy?
Oh, yeah. So I mentioned a minute ago, just it's nice to have a label, right? So this whole lower story, there's many isms: materialism, naturalism, empiricism. There's lots of isms in the lower story. So it's kind of nice to have a label for that whole tradition. So it's called the analytic tradition. It goes back to the British empiricists. That's where it's essentially born. If you read a history of analytic philosophy, they'll start with the British empiricists. Continental thought is just the overriding label for the upper story because it also has encompassed many isms. With Kant, it was called philosophical idealism, which meant ideas, or the mental realm is what's most important. Then it gives rise to existentialism, postmodernism, deconstructionism. But there's a single label that encompasses the whole upper story. And what they have in common is they all say the mental realm is what's most important. And it's to the point where everything is just a social construction, and there's, like transgenderism again, you can't even talk about biological sex because as soon as you start talking, you're using mental constructions. Language is a social construction. Right. So you can't even talk about the body without reducing it to a mental construction. And that's where what's called queer theory, right? You've heard that term, queer theory. So that's where the queer theorists are. They're basically saying even biological sex is a social construction and not a biological reality, in the sense that we can't even talk about it without using language, which is social construction. So when you say, how is it that the upper story, the realm of feelings and ideas and your self-concept, has gotten to the point where it's taken on a new reality, it seems to override even biology. Right. That's the history behind that, is that we are finally, as Christians, see, the trouble is, I'll back up for a minute. The lower story has been taught in all of our universities in the philosophy departments, and that includes the whole English-speaking world. In fact, it's sometimes called Anglo-analytic thought because it's what's dominated in the English-speaking world. And so our philosophers have all been in the lower story, or our apologists have all been arguing against the lower story isms. And all of a sudden, the upper story is taking over, not from philosophy, from the social sciences, from English. Deconstructionism starts out as a literary theory, but now it's taken over virtually every field. Yeah. So that's kind of the backdrop, is how is it that these upper story worldviews, that all of reality is just a social construction, suddenly has so much power, and we didn't see it coming, and as Christian apologists, we haven't really come up with a good apologetic against it, and all of a sudden queer theory and transgender ideology and critical race theory, which you talked about at the beginning, these are all upper story isms, and they are our culture is awash in them. And we've gotten to the point where our secular evolutionary biologists are on the defensive, right? Even the intellectual dark web, as it's called, a lot of them, have you noticed, are evolutionary biologists. That a lot of them are scientists who are saying, whoa, wait a minute. Why is it that our culture is suddenly saying science is irrelevant?
Right.
And science.
Well, and as I've said before on many of my podcasts or whatever, my Brett Stine Has Issues, scientism is a religion. I mean, it is the only religion that Richard Dawkins has, is science. And that's why I think they're so vehemently angry when they fight against it, because you're taking the most personal thing a person can have, their religious belief, and you're dissecting it, or you're undignifying it, and it hurts. It hurts. And so when I saw things like the upper story taking on substance, clearly it's easy to go for power. Everybody wants power, but I see it even deeper. These are the same people that will say language is violence. So think about this. They keep giving concrete material substance to ideas. That's why I was asking you, because this is your wheelhouse, this is your profession. Has this ever happened? Maybe you answered me and I can't understand it, but I've never seen somebody take a subjective philosophical viewpoint and give it a substance that can't be, there can't be an antithetical even denouncement of it, because somehow you have betrayed or in some way harmed or maligned a human being physically. I've never seen this type of a power before, because we can't dissect it. We can't look at it and understand what's happening, because it's all in my mind. And yet I'm demanding you live that way. Well, I don't want to not give people who are watching this an access to your books, because they are so important, and they are places that I got a lot of knowledge from. Like I said, there's a lot. Listen, there's only so many stories to talk about. There's only so much philosophy that can be. It's all just different ways of viewing kind of the same simple ideas. Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? It's all the same real ultimate questions. And we've done everything we can for thousands of years to try to find those answers, but it always leads back to we're either here by design or by accident. There's really nowhere else to look. So how we define that and how we find what is the ultimate truth behind that, if there is one, is where it lands. I wanted to talk when you graciously agreed to let me interview, I thought Love Thy Body, your latest book, would be the great place to go, because it's about transgender and homosexuality. Very dignifying. You're not in any way harming these people. You're just simply trying to talk about what it's really doing in culture. But I got to tell you, Nancy, as I was reading it and reminding myself of the book, because I'd already read it, and looking at some of your other books, the book you actually have up there, I really re-examined Total Truth, because you made reference in Love Thy Body to something that referenced, I think, Total Truth. And I got to tell my people watching this, that's the book to get first, is Total Truth, because that will give you the foundation to understand where she's going with Saving Leonardo and all these other wonderful books that had so many wonderful specifics about cultural issues that Christians need to be able to defend. But frankly, if they don't have a foundation, I think they're going to be spinning their wheels a bit to try to understand how to take these deeply hot button issues like transgenderism and understand it. If they don't understand truth, this two-story division, how people see and think, if you can't understand that, you're not going to be able to empathize with them. You're not going to be able to even know how to debate with them, because you have to understand why they see the world the way they do. And listen, our argument as Christians isn't Democrat, Republican. It's not conservative and leftism. Those are offshoots of what the only argument there is, truth and lies. That's all life is. There's either a truth and there's a lie. There's a father of lies and he who is truth. And that's what I think why Total Truth is to me. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, because maybe Love Thy Body is you think a more important book, and I want people that get it. Would you agree, though, that maybe Total Truth is your opus as far as really giving a foundation for all the rest of the work that you were going to do later? Does that make sense or not?
Yeah, a lot of people have said that, actually, and it is my best-selling book still. It's sold the most copies because people do find it to be foundational, as you put it. And then when you get to questions, let's choose another example besides transgenderism. But homosexuality, again, Christians have not had a way to engage with these issues except negatively. Don't do it, it's a sin, it's against the Bible, and there's something wrong with you if you do it. And Love Thy Body, building on Total Truth, as you note, helps people to understand that actually it involves homosexual ideology involves a division between the body and the person. Think of it this way: even my gay friends will agree that on the level of biology, physiology, anatomy, chromosomes, males and females are counterparts to one another. That's how the human sexual and reproductive system is designed. To embrace a same-sex identity, therefore, is to contradict that design, is to say, why should my body play any role in my identity?
Right.
Why should my biological sex as male or female have any say in my moral choices? So we have to help people realize this is a profoundly disrespectful view of the body.
Right.
What it basically says is the body is a product of mindless, purposeless forces, and therefore it has no intrinsic purpose that we are morally obligated
Right.
to defend. And so this gives Christianity, gives Christians a positive way to deal with these issues, to say, no, Christianity is saying we should respect our body. We should live in harmony with our biological sex. Our body does have purpose, meaning, and dignity. And here's how, Love Thy Body is full of stories and anecdotes. And here's how one woman put it. She had lived as a lesbian for many years, and then married a man. You have to say that these days. Married a man and had 2 children. And she puts it this way. She said, I came to trust that God had made me female for a reason. And I wanted to honor my body. Direct quote. I wanted to honor my body by living in accord with the Creator's design.
Right.
I thought, okay, the first step for Christians is to recognize that we have a positive message. And just changing our language is a huge part of this. Recognizing that the secular worldview actually has a very low view of the body, of the material realm, and that Christianity has a high view, and that we should use words like honor your body by living in accord with the Creator's design. Respect our biological sex, live in congruence with our biology.
Well, I think you mentioned, I think it was either in Tell the Truth or Love Thy Body, about Gnosticism and the fact that they were one of the first to kind of demean the natural world as though it was something that we need to escape from because it's broken. And of course, Christianity, maybe you could quickly, summarize in a certain way, what did Christianity take from Plato, take from some of these other thinkers prior to the Christian thought about the material world? Didn't they presume that the natural world needed to be we need to extricate ourselves from it because it's bad and it's bringing us down, and that became part of the Christian perspective, and that's where we got some of this puritanical caricatures that Christians don't want anything that the body would find fun or joyful because somehow it's sinful. Is there a mixture of secular thinking, I guess, or pagan thinking that it became part of how some Christians saw the material world, and thus they didn't understand the honor that God had given the body when he first created?
Yeah, that's a good point. It is good to start with what does Christianity really say? And to overcome the negative view of the body, we have to reconnect with our own heritage. That, like you say, Christianity was born into a world that denigrated the material world, just like modern secularism does, though for very different reasons.
Yes.
Like you said, it was Gnosticism, it was Platonism, it was Manichaeism. Augustine was a Manichae for a while. And that all taught that the world is a place of death, decay, and destruction, and that salvation is escape from the material world. Plato called the body the prison house of the soul, something we need to escape from. Gnosticism taught that the universe was a creation of a low-level deity. They had several levels. And in fact, it was the lowest deity, an evil God who created this world, because no good God would have created something evil like the material world.
Yeah.
So the Christian view of creation, for starters, was revolutionary, because it said, no, it was not a low-level evil God. It was the highest God, and it's a good God who created this world. And therefore, it is intrinsically good. The fall does not negate that. The fall is a little like a child defacing a great artistic masterpiece, with a black crayon or something. You can still see the beauty of the original masterpiece. And that's the same with the Christian view of the fall, is that you can still see the beauty of the original creation. And then the incarnation. I mean, in the early Christian church, that was the greatest scandal, is that Christians taught that that same supreme deity had actually entered into the material realm and taken on a physical body. So the incarnation was the ultimate affirmation of the dignity of the human body. And then when Jesus was executed on a Roman cross, we might say he did escape the prison house of the body, as Gnosticism taught we should aspire to do. But what did he do then? He came back in a physical body.
Redeemed it.
For the ancient Greeks, this was not progress. This was regress.
Okay.
Who would want to come back to the realm of the body?
Yes.
And then at the end of time, God's not going to scrap this material world as if he made a mistake the first time around. He's going to renew it and restore it and recover it so that there will be a new heavens and a new earth.
Yes.
And you and I will live there in renewed bodies. So I have to tell you, Brad, Christians need to understand that there is no other religion or philosophy that has such a high view of the material world. This is astonishing. This is something that should absolutely inspire us to go out and help people understand the beauty and wonder of the Christian worldview, because it has such a high view of who we are as human beings, not just made in God's image, but the fact that we're part of a material realm that God has made, and that our bodies also have value and dignity. Yes. This is revolutionary in our day, and that should be our primary message.
No, that's wonderful, and I agree. I do a lot of pro-life events and fundraisers for pregnancy resource centers, and one of the things I talk about is how Christianity differentiated between intrinsic value and instrumental value of the human body. That the instrumental value simply states it's whatever we want to use it for, because it's ours. It's sort of our little slave. It has no value or deeper meaning, so it can be manipulated and whatnot, because the truth is in your mind and your thoughts. So let me leave you with this. And again, I thank you so much for being my first guest, and I hope it wasn't too painful for you in me trying to get through this, sounding cohesive. But I hope you'll come back with me, because I love talking to experts on these ideas. It means so much to me. Let me just leave with this, because one of the things that is so important to me, and I believe is what my ministry is being called to, and again, such a ridiculous thing that God had to resort to a comedian to do this work. But I believe my mission is to the church. I believe I've been called to the church. I'm not an evangelist. I believe there's too many churchgoers and not enough Christians in America. And that we need to get to a place like the rest of Christianity around the world that realizes there's a cost to being a true believer. And God expects it and demands it, but also there's a freedom and a beauty that comes from this true commitment. But that also means to study, to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needs not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So that these people that are watching, Christians mainly, that aren't being ashamed, they need to start doing some work. I brought you on first because of how I love how you take these beautiful philosophical ideas, but you give them, topical legs that you can apply right away, because it's necessary, especially for younger people. They're going to be amongst kids their age who don't see any of this way, and see you being mean-spirited or bigoted, simply to disagree with a behavioral idea. So if you were to give, not that they shouldn't all be done, but I'm just trying to make it easy for people to get launched into beginning to understand how to understand Christianity at a deeper level. What would you say the your three books that you would most recommend in order that you think would be the best help to launch somebody's beginning in understanding Christian worldview, so they're educated and sophisticated?
I'm sorry, you mean my books or
Your
other
books.
people's books?
Well, we can ask about the other ones, but yours first.
Well, yeah, it's a little, it does depend a little on where you're coming from. Like, I appreciate you saying total truth, because a lot of people agree with you on that. They say my book, Total Truth, is kind of foundational. But others say they got a easier in to my thinking through Finding Truth, because it's written on a little bit simpler level.
So you would say that that's Total Truth light?
Well,
I mean, and that's okay, because if you're saying that maybe this is a little more in simplistic, not in a degrading way, but if you think it's maybe a simpler way to get into something that they've never done. Most people are scared of philosophy. Instead of realizing you live philosophy your whole life, now it's time to understand what you're actually doing. So finding truth, total truth, and then maybe love thy body because it's what's happening right now.
Well, let me finish saying that.
Okay.
What makes finding truth unique is you don't have to learn philosophy.
Oh.
Because it draws out an apologetic method based on Romans 1.
Okay.
So it's based very much on Scripture.
Nice.
And I think that's the strength of it, is it draws out, sure, you do have to deal with issues that philosophy deals with, but you're going to show that it's extracted from Paul's argument in Romans 1. And so I love that, because, otherwise you feel like, well, am I really being drawn into some man-made, some human system of thought? Even reading a Christian apologist, okay, but these are his ideas, these are his arguments.
Right.
Or her, I should say.
Yeah.
But finding truth shows that that it uses some of the same arguments, obviously, that philosophers have used, but shows how they are derived from Romans.
Okay.
And so that makes it, to me, that makes it even more important, because it's God's word.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's God's word, so I can trust it.
Okay. And then is there any other book that you would recommend outside of your own to help somebody who's trying to get started in this as an important part of their spiritual journey that would be helpful? Maybe Francis Schaeffer's books? I don't know.
Well, on my books, I would agree with you that the third one would be Love Thy Body, just because it deals with current issues, abortion, euthanasia, the hookup culture, homosexuality, transgenderism. Yes, it deals with these issues. And so it gets you into somewhat more philosophical issues, but by means of the challenges you're facing today. Your own kid comes home saying, "Mom, I think I'm really the opposite sex."
Right.
Your own kid comes home and says, I'm gay. Your grandchild, your neighbor, whatever. I've not dealt with any large group, speaking to an audience, where you didn't get several stories where it's hitting people in their own personal lives now.
Yeah.
So that's really important. People say, okay, I can get this upper lower story stuff if you show me how it applies to my own kid who has gender dysphoria.
And Nancy, to your that's exactly why I said your books, I think, are different in that regard to typical apologists in philosophy. Is you try to connect it to actual real world topical issues, so you can use it as what it's designed to do, a tool to help negotiate a situation that you don't know how to necessarily do. And you can't just give somebody a scripture and say that's enough. That's not going to work anymore. We no longer have Christianity as intrinsically valued or even presumed to have truth. So, and maybe just one book that you would recommend somebody kind of getting started in it that's outside of yours.
Right. When people ask me how do I get started in apologetics, I always tell them, look, start with the best. The two greatest apologists of the 20th century were Francis Schaeffer and C.S. Lewis.
I was going to say C.S. Lewis. I wasn't sure if you put Francis in it. Yeah, I love C.S. Lewis. Yeah.
The two of them were the top apologists in terms of the sheer number of people who either became Christians or were brought through a crisis of faith by their works. And so I always tell people, if you haven't mastered them, don't go anywhere else. Just don't. Master them first. Read them not only for information, but read them until they shape your thinking, until you can think like they do. And that's what I try to do. I have a class here at HBU, Houston Baptist University. I have a class on Lewis and Schaeffer, and that's my goal.
Okay.
Because I don't just, it's not just historical. Hey, they said this, they said that. Who cares?
Yeah.
The purpose is to read and integrate your own thinking so deeply that you think like them, and then you can apply their systems of analysis, their arguments. You can apply it to the issues of our own day. That's the goal, is that you become a person who can then apply Christian truth in that apologetic way to what you're encountering in your own life.
Perfect. Well, listen, I think I went over time. You've been very gracious. Again, thank you so much for given me the privilege to talk to you. You're actually the first apologist I've ever actually interviewed. I've read all you guys' books, but I've never, God's taken me into this new place, and this is important to me. And so it was an honor. I hope you would be willing to let me interview somewhere down the road again. There's so much more we could talk about. But thank you so much. I'm going to really make people be more aware of your books and make sure that they buy them, because they're so crucial and important to what's happening in this culture right now. So God bless you, Professor Nancy Piercy, and keep writing those books, because I know I need them, and I'm sure there's others out there too. So thank you so much for being the first one on Brad Stine Has Issues and my interviews with people much smarter than me. God bless you, folks.
So as I said, I promised you, and I have delivered. We were going to have better, more eclectic, more interesting guests, and they are eclectic. That's one thing I really like, is that they're all not gonna all be the same. We're gonna have some professor of apologetics, and then we're gonna have a singer, and then we're gonna have a warrior pastor, and then we're gonna have a magician, and then we're going to have, who knows, but I just love people that have interesting, unique ways of seeing the world. We really need, at the minimum, to understand what it is that we actually believe and live it. And you can't live it if you don't know what the principles are, what the constructs are, and how to navigate life. It actually teaches you how to find balance and get through hard things. We don't know what kind of hell's coming. We don't know. But we do know that God will be with us, and we need to be one, be in unity, fight like men and women, and have the techniques that we all will need to integrate and help each other, assist each other, and walk people through the world. People need answers. They need hope. That's what the militia of the mind is. People feel like we see all the crap that's happened. We see all the hell that's come against us. We see all the tyranny. We see all the totalitarianism. We see all the lies, the corruption, the depth of corruption in DC politics. These people are horrendously despicable human beings. They just are. What they've done, what they've sold out, and sold our country out, sold our freedoms out, sold our Constitution out, sold them out to communist groups, letting China control them, getting themselves into situations that they are controlled, because who knows what kind of children they were having sex with. I mean, this is what the Epstein Island thing was. This is what our people are that are in D.C., and they need to be rooted out. And I pray that God will bring justice and rip out this evil, and let us have a chance to renew and restore this nation. Maybe it won't happen, but let's fight for it. Let's pray for it. And we can only do that if we are warriors that are fully trained and armed to do the work. Folks, I got a lot of more great guests coming these next few weeks. I've already got some already been interviewed, but I'm going to keep adding that. I've got a special guy that just is going to be, I'm going to interview him in a couple weeks. You're going to love him, an artist that you will just find amazing. This is what I want to do, folks. I just want you to enjoy this, but I want you to be educated and inspired. I'm grateful that I'm doing this. I'm grateful the country's still free and we still have a chance. So pray for me. If you're interested in donating, you can do that at any time. It's 501c3, so you want to give a gift to keep this going to see if we can grow it into something even more, so be it. Soon, the Militia of the Mind and the Mighty 10,000 will be launched to where you can actually join and become the official, one of the official 10,000. Once the 10,000 is reached, we will take whatever and whomever else wants to participate. But there will only be one batch of 10,000 Americans who said, we've had enough, we're pushing back. That's what this is all about. That's why I'm God's comic. Brad Stine. Go to my website, bradstine.com, to see when I'm going to be playing near you. Come see me, come say hi. And hey, let's just keep seeing what just might occur if people believe that miracles can still be on the horizon. Thank you so much for showing up on Mondays. And let's see if we can invite more people and even get more every time. Remember, you don't have to fear it. God wins every time. PC free is liberty. You must treasure liberty. And you know who I am. God's coming, Brad Stine. You know what I do. Why, all I do is put the woke back to sleep. We did it. See you next Monday. There. All right, thanks, son.